Today we're going to be making drum samples. As I'm sure you're all aware, New York City has been ravaged by COVID-19, and there's been a citywide lockdown where I'm not allowed to go to my studio. I can still go out and get groceries and stuff, but I really want to practice. So I have a sensor percussion drum kit here that I use to make all sorts of goofy noises, but I wanted to have some drum sounds on it to practice regular drums. So I quickly made some samples at my studio before I packed up the TV and other stuff that I wanted to use here for this undetermined amount of time that I'm going to be practicing out of my apartment. So for this whole process, I'm going to take you through recording the samples all the way to using them to your DAW. And the ones that I use in this example, I'm going to let you guys download for free in a Google Drive link that I'm going to put in the description below. So feel free to check that out and use them in your mixes or your practice or whatever you want to use them for. So first we're going to do a little flash to the past to when I recorded these drum samples, and let's check out the process of tuning and miking and recording them. Normally when I would record drum samples, I want to use a set of fresh heads, just put on maybe a day old. The reason I didn't do that here is because I wasn't really planning on making drum samples, but I literally had heard 6 hours before that I wasn't gonna be able to use my studio in 2 days. It wasn't enough time to go grab new drum heads and do the whole thing. What I had on there is what I used for this sample collection. It's just a set of Remo Emperor clears on the toms, and a controlled sound Remo on my Offbeat snare drum, and a Power Stroke 3 on my kick. So let's go through my mic selection for all these drums. So for my snare, I'm using a Shure Beta 57 on top with a Shure regular old 57 on bottom. For my kick drum, I'm using a Shure Beta 91A with an Audix D6 and a sub kick. For my two rack toms, I'm using a Sennheiser MD421, and my first floor tom, I'm using a Shure Beta 52, and my second floor tom, I'm using an Audix D6. So for these samples, I'm going to record them from the loudest hit to the softest hit, and I'm trying to get a number of strokes per velocity. That way I have enough to cycle through in my sampler without it sounding like it's the same hit over and over and over and over. So when you're taking these samples, really focus on getting consistent hits with the same volume for all your categories of your velocities. All right, so now that we took all of our samples, let's head back to my apartment and we're gonna put all this stuff together in a Pro Tools session. Okay, so what I did here is I took all of my samples from my room and we're gonna start with the snare. So you'll notice that we've got all of the tracks and we're not gonna need all of them. So what you can do is you can just clean out the things that we're not going to need. For that, I should mention that you should group all of your drums together using Shift G and make a group called Drums All or whatever you want. That way we can select everything together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have Tab to Transient activated, and we're just going to go and cut all these. So I'm using Tab to get up to the transient, and then I'm going to use Command E to split the transient. And right now we're just going to go through and make ugly cuts of these. And if you notice, I went from the loudest to the softest sample. That way I can do everything and bounce everything in order. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put fades on all of them. Just really small ones, that way they don't have a little crackle in and out when you use them in Trigger or any other instance that we're going to be using them. So if we do a fade on Pro Tools, it's Command F, and I'm just doing a 1 millisecond, and we'll do 10 for the end. So we want to make sure that all of our microphones are in phase for this. So what I'm going to do is I use a plugin called Auto Align. So I put this on my overhead, left or right, doesn't really matter, and I make a send 1. So then I go to my other overhead with another instance of Auto Align, and I make it receive 1. Input and sidechain to the proper levels, and I want delay and polarity. I'm just gonna run this a couple times. Wow, only 8. I'm not gonna do it to the rooms because I want that depth. So now I'm just gonna put it on the snare, make sure the snare is aligned to that overhead as well. So now you'll notice that there's a weird sound happening, and that's because the snare bottom is out of phase with everything else. So to get it back in phase, I'm gonna make a send from my snare top, and I'm gonna make my snare bottom align with my snare top microphone. Boom. So now our snare is in phase, and it sounds pretty sick. So now that we're done prepping the raw snare samples, let's go through and do some processing for the snare top close mics. I generally EQ my snare top and bottom separately and then compress them together in a bus, and that's always worked for me. So let's just listen to what they sound like. So let's just check out the snare top. And what I'm doing there is just a bunch of reductive EQing, getting rid of some of the weirdness in the low end, nothing too crazy. The snare bottom. And the snare bottom, I'm kind of just getting rid of all the harshness in the high end just to make it a little bit more usable. And then together, I'm using the API 2500, ratio set to 3. And then I'm using a little bit more EQ for the top end. So now that we've done some processing on them, let's get these bad puppies into a state where we can put them in a sampler. So one way to do it is to take all these snare tracks, Command Shift K, and this will process and export just the snare top. But I want to have the snare top and bottom as one track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down to our snare bus here, and I'm just going to click commit. And it's going to do its thing. Dear God, it takes forever. So now we have our printed snare bus tracks here. The only problem is now we're gonna have to go back through and tab to transient them. But the fades are already printed in there, right? So after I do this, I can grab them, Command Shift K, and export them. So you can do this for your overheads as well as your room mics. So now that we've done the exporting, let's talk about a little bit of management. So I use this cool application called Name Changer to just kind of make this stuff a little bit more organized. I've already organized them, and it'll be like this for you if you download these. They've already been organized by hard and soft, right? Some of them I did a little bit more, but again, mind you, I did this super quick because I was running out of my studio and I knew I wasn't going to be coming back for a while. So these aren't super meticulous samples, but they'll be good enough for my use here just to practice and for, one shots and stuff like that. So let's go into this tom one, and we're going to go into the processed ones. And so if I go into this name changer, what I can do is I can go in go to my tom, processed, hard, open them, and I can say I want my new neat renamed files are gonna be the name after the digits and then put the dot wave at the end again. I don't know why, for some reason this program makes you put the dot wave in, otherwise they won't read as wave files anymore. A little bit annoying, but it was free. So now I'm just gonna click rename and check this out. Boom. Now that you have all these samples in wave format and you might want to use them in a sampler, the first one we're going to go over is trigger. I use this one a lot. The way to make the samples is a little bit confusing and annoying, but I'll show you how to do it. So let's make a full sample of all the velocities of the snare top for trigger. So we've got 3 velocities, so we're going to want 3 rows. Our rows are going to be for our velocities, and our columns are going to be for our amount of hits we have per velocity. So I'm going to go look here. These ones have already been titled. I have 12. So I'm going to make this 12. And I'm just going to put all of these in the top there. I'm going to go to my medium one here, drag this one here, and then my soft ones as well. Boom. And then I can save that as Offbeat snare sample. So now let's talk about how to do this in Drumagog. So I have an old version of Drumagog. I haven't used it in a long time, but it's still a good one. The reason I like trigger better, let me just reactivate that real quick. See, I clearly haven't used it in a long time. Cool, all right, so now we are in, so I'm gonna make a new GOG. We're gonna call it Offbeat Snare Top. I'm gonna grab my snare top. I'm gonna drag all these hard samples in here. And I'm gonna assign all of these articulation groups. So now I'm gonna have groups for my velocities here. So we reset it to 4 dynamic levels. We're only gonna use 3 though. So we're gonna use dynamic group 4 for these. And I'm gonna go to my medium, which we're gonna use dynamic group 3. And then our soft, you know what? We're gonna use dynamic group 1 and we're just gonna flip it. There we go. So that would be how you'd put up your samples in Drumagog as well. So now let's check these out on my application for this, which is gonna be my sensory percussion drum set. Since I'm gonna be home, stuck here for who knows how long. So let's go check it out. So this is the setup in here. I'm using my sensory percussion drum set with my samples on my drums, and I put some GGD samples on my Roland SPDSX for cymbals. So it's really nice having a full drum kit sound in here with just, 4 drums and a pad. It helps me practice better, which I really appreciate considering I don't know when I'm going to get back to a real drum set. So I hope you guys enjoyed the drum samples. Feel free to download them. They're going to be in a Google Drive link in the description below. Let me know if you use them for your own Roland kits or your mixes or anything else. I'd love to hear what you've done with them. And feel free, if you stuck around for the video for this long, I know it was a stupid long video, didn't really mean for it to be like that, but feel free to give the video a like and subscribe if you want to check out more videos. I'm going to be posting a bunch of stuff considering I can't leave my house. I've been having a lot of fun practicing on this drum set. I've been using it on my Twitch streams, which you're more than welcome to check out. We always have a lot of fun in those. I'm still really excited to get back to a real drum kit, hopefully in the near future. If you guys are also staying at home like me, stay safe, stay home, only go outside to get groceries, Netflix and chill, practice drums, do whatever you need to do to stay sane. Everything will be cool. So thanks again for checking out the video, and I will see you in the next one.